Hey, so I'm here today with Alexia Knight. She is the author of the Tinderella Diaries trilogy. She's been a guest and done a couple of written interviews, and I'm thrilled to have her here. And Alexia, before we dive into things, let's tell people where you are and who you are and where people can get your books.
Okay. Well, I live in Los Angeles, and this is where my stories are based. I've written a trilogy of erotic memoirs, and they are all true stories based on events that actually happened in my life. And I say based on, but it literally is my diary that I've published. These books can be found pretty much anywhere books are sold. Paperback at this point, and ebooks. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, iBooks, Scribed, places like that. I also sell autographed copies. If anybody wants autographed copies of one or all three of the books, I love to do that. And that is typically through PayPal or Venmo. And I would ship those directly out immediately to customers who want them.
Do you have a website that they can go to get in touch with you, or is it best for them to get a hold of you on social media?
Either way is fine. My website is tinderelladiary.com, quite simple. Mm-hmm. Most of my social media handles are Tinderella Diary. That would be Instagram, Snapchat. The only one that's a little bit different is Twitter, because Tinderella Diary was taken by somebody who does not use it. So my Twitter handle is Tinderella with 5 underscores after the word Tinderella. So that's a little bit trickier, but Twitter's fun because I just kind of say whatever I want and post whatever I want, and everything gets to exist.
Well, and that seems to be your MO. You get to say what you want and do what you want, and and just kind of let it out there. Is that how you intended these books to be?
Yes, this is just me. This is my story, my life as I live it. I try to be as honest and genuine as possible, just to sort of let the readers and the world into what I'm thinking at any given moment. And just, tell the story. This is my life. And, each of the 3 books represents a different stage in the recent history of my life. But I'm still living. And as that happens, I, post content, whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm doing, whoever I'm doing, it's an open book at this point.
No pun intended, I'm sure. Okay.
No.
So what, all right. So you said that these are your diaries, kind of clean. Well, I'm not going to say cleaned up.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Obfuscated. The names of the innocent, the names have been changed to protect the innocent, right?
Right. The not so innocent.
And the not so innocent. Exactly. So, all right. So people write diaries all the time, but not a lot of people decide that they want to put it out in front of, the world. So how did you get to that place that you wanted to, okay, this needs to be out there. This needs to be shared.
All right. So basically what happened was I just started living this sexual journey that never in my life had I anticipated. At the time I started writing, I was a 40-year-old married woman. I'd never had any dating profiles or hookup profiles or hookup culture. This was all completely foreign to me. I was married to my high school sweetheart. He was the only thing that I knew about adult sexuality. And one morning I woke up and I said, you know what? I want to go a different direction and try some different things. So I started a Tinder account, and practically immediately I met somebody on there, and we had an encounter that is very well documented in the beginning of the first book. And after that encounter, I was just thinking, I really need to see what's out there. I need to see what I've been missing. I need to see what different bodies feel like, shapes and colors and ages and everything. So I just started meeting more and more people. And at some point I'm thinking, this feels like a series. This feels like every encounter is an episode of a series. And I'm thinking somebody could learn from this, maybe a woman who's either, in my shoes or who was going through some of the same marital difficulties that I was going through, maybe wanted to do what I was doing, or maybe didn't choose to do what I was doing, but maybe fantasized about that. And I just thought I couldn't believe the things that were happening to me. I couldn't believe the people that I had met in a short amount of time and the experiences that I had. And through each experience, I learned a little bit about myself as a human, as a sexual person, what I wanted, what I enjoyed, what I had been missing out on. And it was definitely trial and error. The books are not a fantasy. It is exactly what happened, or at least my perspective of it at the time. And
Right.
One of the reasons why I was writing and publishing so quickly is because things change. What you feel about somebody when you meet them could be different a couple months later, or when you wake up and realize certain things about certain people or certain things about yourself. So I started keeping these journals, which I've always done. I've always been an avid journaler. But I also had these texting conversations with people who were trying to get together with me. And I used these texting conversations in conjunction with my memories written in my diary to write the book. So these are people's, not just my actual life and my experience in words, but other people's actual lives and experience and words. Of course, I can't tell it from their point of view because I don't know what that is, but I make a lot of assumptions,
Right.
which is really interesting. But this is just me saying, this is how I felt and this is what happened. Nothing is sugar-coated to make me sound better than I am or to make anyone feel sorry for me. It just is what it is. It's frank and it's honest and it's open and it's raw. And sometimes it's funny. Sex is funny. There's a lot of humorous things that happen when two strangers get naked and try to figure out each other's bodies. So I just felt a story was developing. After I wrote the first book, which the events of the first book occur over a summer, I figured this would be it. This is my hot girl summer. I go back to my normal life. And I quickly realized I'm not going back to anything normal soon. So I kept living the life and I kept writing. And eventually it became a trilogy. And how I knew it was going to be a trilogy is COVID. So the second book kind of foreshadows that COVID is coming. There's a lot of these moments where I'll see you in 3 weeks. And then, little did we know that nothing was going to be happening in 3 weeks. So the second book kind of ends on that COVID cliffhanger where we don't really know what's going to happen. And it's also a slightly longer period of time. It was a 6-month period of time, whereas the first book was a summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the books came out pretty quickly. I think the first one came out just about a year ago, didn't it?
Yes. But it was published. All of the books were published in 2021. So book 1 came out February and book 2 came out in the summer. And then I got book 3 out by Christmas. I just felt like I had to move, especially because COVID was happening. And I thought that we were gonna forget what the world was like before COVID, before masks. And, even Tinder was telling us not to meet up in person. And, we were, spoiler alert. But, a lot of things changed. Everything was closed down. People who were sneaking around behind their spouses' backs lost their alibis, were trapped at home. And that made, of course, great drama for book 3. So book 3 occurs entirely over a year of COVID from March 2020 to March 2021. And it's much fuller of a story, whereas the first book is very episodic. She meets this guy, she meets this other guy, she meets this other guy, she gets together with guy number one a second time. And then book two has new characters, also has some recurring characters from the first book, but it's a little bit more about the situations that she gets herself into. I'm talking about myself in the third person. That's very strange. But it's more than the characters itself. The third book, some time has elapsed, 9 months since the beginning of the series, and things are a little bit more interwoven and interconnected. There are people in her life that have become regulars. And then, of course, COVID just changes everything. There are certain things that she was doing in book 1 and 2 that she can't do anymore. So book 3 is very sentimental. It really looks at living in Los Angeles at the time with everything was really shut down. And I understand in different parts of the country, things were handled a little bit differently, but it kind of documents what it was like to, one day we're not wearing masks and then we're forced to wear masks and then we can't go anywhere. And the clubs are closed, the bars are closed. And I was somebody who had just figured out in my life that I actually enjoyed dating and going to restaurants with people. That was something I didn't do in the beginning. It was purely sexual. Let's get together and fuck, let's get together and fuck. And toward the end of book 2, I'm like, I can sit down and have a drink or a dinner with somebody. That's okay. And then, nope, sorry, COVID, everything was closed. Restaurants were closed. Traffic on the 405 for once in my human life was quiet. So everything changed. So I'm very sentimental about sort of documenting, not only in my personal life, but historically what it felt like for me to be part of this COVID experience. And there were also political things going on. The Black Lives Matter protest was incorporated into the story. It was actually happening at the time. And just because it's Los Angeles, we actually had a historical moment where our mayor was giving a press conference about these riots that were going on in the middle of a pandemic, and an earthquake happened. Like this is ridiculous. Like this has to be remembered by the world as something, very current and very Los Angeles.
So you've kind of become an involuntary historian, recording kind of one woman's perspective on the past couple years of COVID.
Yes.
Impacted how it's changed your life.
Yes, exactly. People's livelihoods were lost, and my story is a very it's very simple in terms of what could have happened and what did happen to some people during that time. There were no tragedies in my life, but I do acknowledge, some other things that happened to other people. At the core of the story, it's still erotica. It's filthy as heck, but there's so much going on, and I think that's kind of a metaphor for me as a person. I'm a very sexual person, but I'm also deep and intelligent and thoughtful and funny and a lot of these things. And these different aspects of my personality comes out not only in my writing, but in my social media as well. So.
Right. Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that interacting with you online. So yeah, you touched on it, how the first one was very episodic, and then the second one gets a little bit more complex, and the third one, it really is all interwoven. Are there plans to have a fourth one, or is this going to be a trilogy, and then whatever you do next, because I'm sure there's going to be a next, is going to be something different?
I felt very strongly that this was a trilogy and it needed to end where it needed to end. But again, this is a person's life, and it could go long. It could go on as long as that person's life goes on. I've been thinking about writing a fourth book. But I feel like I just want to end that trilogy and write some different things. So some of the things I were thinking about were maybe some spin-offs, some backstories of some of the more popular, exciting characters. We know a lot about Lexi, or, me as a character, and what I think and what I feel, how I was raised, what my, there's a lot of my adolescence and the beginning of my relationship with my husband and how things changed over the years. But there's not a lot of that with the male characters or the supporting characters. And a lot of my fans connect with those characters as well. And I think it would be interesting to explore some of those things. I also have some, I don't know, extra scenes that didn't make the book that I'm thinking these could be interesting as independent short stories, things like that. There's a love quadrangle book that I might like to write. And then I'm also thinking I really want to write legitimate nonfiction. I'm very interested in sexual dynamics, couples dynamics, kinks and predilections, and where they come from, and why we like what we like, and why we like who we like. And a lot of these things that I've observed through the years by not just my experience, but talking to other people, my partners and my friends and the people that I've met, and listening to their stories. What is it like for a man to try to meet a woman on Tinder? It's a completely different world. What is it like for a man who likes to have sexual encounters with other couples? What are their stories like? I'm really fascinated by sexual sociology, how we behave, why we behave, sexual anthropology, like what are evolutionary evolutionary traits that have been passed down from caveman days. Maybe I like to read studies on those things and talk to actual people about where they think that these things came from, foot fetishes, and there's so much stuff that I want to write about from a non-narrative perspective.
Okay, so looking to the future, we should look for some more. We should look for you playing on the nonfiction side of the fence.
Possibly, I wouldn't. I mean, the books are nonfiction anyways because they're true stories, but they're written as a narrative, and I kind of want to do a little bit of both. Continue more narrative style writing, and also just say, hey, this is what I learned about sex and about life. And if you're a man, if you're a woman, or whatever you are, whatever you like, whatever you're into, here's some advice. advice from a pro.
Yeah. So, okay. Now you mentioned fleshing out some of the secondary characters. Would those be more fictionalized, or would you be going back to those people and saying, hey, I want to do this? I
would be going back to those people. Yeah. I don't feel comfortable taking someone else's story and making something up. If I'm just going with the general gist of what the story has been like, it's the truth. So there are people, hundreds of people that I still keep in contact with for a myriad of reasons. And I would love to have that opportunity to give a little bit more of their version of the story and how they came to be what they came to be, because everybody's got a different reason for doing what they do and choosing what they choose and liking what they like and whatever situation that they wind up in. And people kind of like reading about some of these characters, and it might be interesting to give them a little more.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating to me because I write on the fiction side of things, and so if I want to create a character's backstory, okay, I can create a character's backstory. So it sounds much more involved. It sounds like you've also given a fair bit of thought to, okay, how can I do this? How is this going to work? If I decide to go ahead with it.
Yeah, I think it's a natural extension of me getting to know people more and have deeper relationships with people. And then I start to see, oh, okay, I understand why this is why he does this, or this is why he likes this, or this is why we have such a strong connection because of that history. And I feel like that history should be explored as well. Everybody came to a certain situation because of whatever factors were going on in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to ask you this, and this is kind of the question that authors dread. Which, looking back on your books, looking back into them, is there a scene, a passage, a chapter which you're just like, absolutely, this is, this resonates with me completely. This is, I really hit my stride in this one. I don't want to use the favorite word.
Yeah.
But one that you're just going, you're sitting there and you point to it and go, that one, that is me. Yeah, and that is the the essence of who I am. I did this one as best I could, and I love this one.
The thing that immediately pops to my head is the very last sex scene that occurs in the trilogy. And not only is it a culmination of who I am as this character and everything that I've gone through, but it's also the writing. I think it's the best written sex scene that I wrote. And it is for a reason, because she could not describe sex in that way at the beginning of the story, because she didn't know. If you don't have certain experiences in your life, you don't know what it feels like. You don't know how to talk about it. You don't know how to write about it. And there's such a growth, especially in how the sex scenes are described in the beginning of the series versus at the end of the series. But it's also the culmination of, what she physically is experiencing, but what she has gone through and how she is able to cognitize what is happening to her physically into words. And that's something that, as a typical erotica writer, you have all these fancy, beautiful metaphoric ways of describing what sex feels like and what an orgasm feels like. And, some of it can become a little bit cliche, but I stray from that completely. I really try to avoid any, throbbing loins or heaving bosoms or anything along those lines. And if I do say things like that, I do it almost tongue in cheek. But that last sex scene, I feel like this writing is incredible. And there was a lot of pressure to get that scene correct, to depict it the way it happened and the way it felt. And it's also, it's funny because it's Tinderella, but it's not a Cinderella story. It's not a fantasy or a fairy tale. There has to be moments of closure for the character, but there's no running off into the sunset, happy ending kind of a thing. But it has to end the story, and it has to give the readers what they want, and it has to be real. There was no way that I was going to give an ending that didn't reflect the rest of the book, which is complete and utter truth. So I'm very proud of that scene and the writing and just getting to that point.
Okay. So, all right. So the latest one, the conclusion to the trilogy came out in December. So what have you been working on since then? I mean, I know we all need downtime. After writing and editing and and doing the launches and all that good stuff, but I know enough writers. There's always that itch. There's always the okay, it's time to write again. That little voice in the back of your head going, pick up the pen. Come on, Alexia, pick up the pen. You wanna. So what does that voice talk you into?
Well, there's a couple of things that are happening in my head simultaneously. One is I'm trying to tidy them up a little bit and republish them without as many typographical and formatting errors. So that's something that I'm doing right now is I just want to go back and clean it up. And that's hard because I don't want to revise as I'm proofreading. I just want to take out all the typos that are there. Another thing is I'm trying to see if there's something that I could turn this into that's bigger than the series itself. I'm very connected to this concept of the Tinderella title and Tinderella trilogy and, jump on the Tinderella train. I feel that is a brand that I want to explore and grow and see where I can go with that. I think it might be a good time for me to look for representation, to see if I can get an agent to help promote that way. And I've definitely been self-promoting, trying to move copies of these books and have conversations with readers. And then it's like, okay, eventually I'm going to have to write something else. And I'm still trying to decide, as I mentioned before, what direction that is. But I do see this being something that occurs on a screen. I don't necessarily see it being a movie, but I see a series of Showtime, Netflix, something like that. There's a lot of people who've suggested I should write the screenplay for it and not hand that off to something else. So that's something that I'm considering as well. Yeah, it'll be a fun summer.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It sounds like it will be. All right. So let's tell our listeners once again where people can find you. Where's the best place for your readers to find you? The place that you gravitate to, that you're like, oh yeah, I like it here. I want to interact with my fans here.
Well, that answer would be Facebook. I am a words person first and foremost. So Instagram, I just because I'm so anonymous and I don't show my face, it's hard for me to gain traction on Instagram in the way that I would like to. But, words are my weapons of choice. And I like Facebook. I have the largest following on there. It's quick and easy to interact and write, and also have my fans and people who contribute interact with each other, which is really great when people are talking to each other about my writing and I don't have to say everything on my own. So I would say Facebook. You can find me at Alexia Knight. I know there are more than one person with that name. There is also a porn star. That is not me. I chose writing. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook under Alexia Knight. I also have a Tinderella Diary page and an Alexia Knight author page, but my regular Facebook page is my biggest one, and that's where I like to talk to people. I definitely appreciate any growth that I could have on Instagram. I post stories all the time. I post content when I can. Tinder is fun, but it's just not as, I'm sorry, Twitter. Twitter is fun, but there just isn't as much traffic on there for me. So I just post and post and post. And if people like it, great. If not, move on. I'm hearing that it's time for me to get on TikTok, but my kid's on there.
There's a lot of that going around,
Yeah.
Get on TikTok. And then it always goes back to the same. Yeah, it always circles back to, like the Facebook author groups and the Facebook interactions and sending out newsletters.
Yes. I've been on Reddit a little bit, but they're so picky that on, what you're allowed to post and what you're not allowed to post and what the rules are on each subreddit, that I'm having trouble navigating that structure of Reddit. And I thought that would be an easy one for me, is because it's very word-based and story-based, but they're like, nope, you can't post this. Sorry. So half of the stuff that I post gets deleted, but I try. And I love commenting on other people's posts and things on Reddit. And then that kind of will have people come and say, oh, wait, what is this you're talking about? What did you write? So that's kind of something that I've been trying to do, is maybe not post so much content, but interact with other people's.
Well, all right. So the last thing, is there any last words you'd like to send out to your readers, to your new readers, to our listeners?
Yeah, I just want to tell anybody who's listening, I love interacting with my fans and readers. I love talking about sex in general. I love giving people advice, what to do, what not to do, just based on what I've learned. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. If anybody has any suggestions or advice on how to more cleverly market this series, I would appreciate that. I love talking to people about the craft as well. I'm open to suggestions. If somebody hates the book or is completely repulsed by typographical errors, I understand that. We're all human. So, you don't have to love it, but there's definitely a lot to talk about.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for taking time to be here today. And everybody, that's Alexia Knight, author of the Tinderella Diaries trilogy, and a really fascinating person.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to interact with you and share ideas with you. And I'm learning a lot from you as well.
Thanks. All right. You. Hey, so thanks for listening. I'm Adam Gaffen. I was your host. That was Alexia Knight. You can find her on Facebook and on Amazon. Pick up her book, Tinderella Diaries 1, 2, and 3. Don't forget, you'll be able to find this interview on my YouTube channel and on CassidyChronicles.com very shortly. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.